The media had their hands full in 1994 as it was a huge year for crazy events in the US. This was particularly true for sports. One major event was the Winter Olympics set to take place in 1994 in Norway. Around these 1994 Olympic Games is where one of the most popular sports scandals of all time would eventually occur. The case starts like this. The USA figure skating Olympic trials were in full swing, and it was coming down to the wire for who would end up making the team. Tonya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan already had built a rivalry in the sport as they had been trading wins back and forth since 1991. The scramble for spots on the 1994 Olympic team pitted the two athletes against each other, with Kerrigan being favored to win. Despite her winnings, Harding had cast herself as an underdog in the competition. When asked about her thoughts before the Olympics, Harding had been quoted saying that, "What I am really thinking about now are the dollar signs." This shows how motivated Harding was to be on this Olympic team, and the fact that she was an underdog only fueled her strong desire to win at whatever the cost. On January 6, 1994, Kerrigan had just got off the ice at Cobo Arena in Detroit when a man came from behind a corner and bashed her knee in with a metal pole. He took off and escaped through a boarded-up door while Kerrigan fell to the floor screaming. This image of Kerrigan screaming on the floor of the arena would eventually be the first story or the front page of every news network, paper, and magazine in the country. 6 days later, a man named Shane Stant turned himself in, claiming that he was hired for $6,500 to perform the hit on Kerrigan. His accomplices were his uncle Derek Smith and a man named Sean Eckert, who was Harding's bodyguard at the time. These three men met with Jeff Jaluli, Harding's ex-husband, to discuss the plan and the best way to perform the hit. The four men that were involved in the case ended up turning themselves in or ratting each other out to the police and other investigative agents, and they all went to trial. Harding was not implicated as having any involvement in the case until later, after the original four had already been caught. But because so many of her associates were involved, the media did not miss the chance to jump on the idea that she too could be involved. Harding already had a reputation, as she had a messy breakup with her ex-husband, and she had been seen getting into a fistfight with another driver on the road in her hometown. Other skaters were quick to weigh in on their thoughts regarding Harding and her bad reputation, which only added to the suspicion surrounding her in this case. A few weeks after Kerrigan was injured, a bar owner in Portland went to dump her garbage, and she ended up finding an envelope that contained a check from U.S. Figure Skating made out to Tonya Harding and information regarding Kerrigan's location and practice schedule. It was later that these documents were discovered to have Harding's handwriting on them, which was a huge step in implicating her in the case. These documents, discovered completely by accident, were a turning point in the case, as they pointed to Tonya's involvement, which the media had already been speculating about from the get-go. The restaurant owner, Kathy Peterson, was asked to testify in the trial, and her restaurant became a huge landmark for the media, which came with many negative consequences for her. Peterson was quoted as saying that reporters regularly showed up at dockside with boom mics and cameras, and the bar's phones rang off the hook. When she was out in public, Peterson overheard strangers discussing her involvement in the case, and she got hate mail from fans who blamed her for the demise of Harding's skating career. This is an example of how these media trials can have an effect on members of the public. The restaurant owner wanted nothing to do with the case, but she was constantly having to deal with the media in the aftermath of her testimony in the case. All four men were convicted of various crimes related to the assault and the pre-planning of the attack, and they all went to jail, but Harding, whose involvement was more difficult to prove, was able to get away with probation, community service, and a fine of $160,000. And despite the controversy and large public outcry, Harding was able to compete in the Olympics, which she ultimately lost after a meltdown concerning a broken shoelace. Some would say that this was a huge letdown for the media, as they would have had much more controversy if she had placed or won a medal in these Olympics. Many media trials begin with a newsworthy crime or famous defendant. This trial happened to contain both a newsworthy crime and a notable defendant. Harding was well known in the skating community as she already had wins under her belt and was the only skater at the time to land a triple axel in competition. These feats made Harding a popular figure, and with the Olympics coming up, she and Kerrigan were already in the media spotlight. When the news came out that she was potentially involved in the attack on Kerrigan, the media were already waiting to pounce on the story. The media trial theme that was discussed in the Surratt text that best fits this case is the abuse of power theme. In this theme, the defendant occupies a position of power, authority, or prestige, and I believe that Harding was in a position of prestige as an athlete on the world stage. After the details of her potential involvement in the crime came out, the media were on her like wolves, seeking to show that she was an ambitious, greedy, and jealous girl. This is where the full abuse of power theme comes to a complete circle. A person who was once respected falls out of favor and begins to suffer the consequences of their actions. Cecil's 2007 study on female criminals' portrayal in the entertainment media showed that female motivation for crime is primarily greed, revenge, or love-based. Her findings are perfectly reflected in this case. The media wanted to portray this idea that greed and jealousy were the sole reasons behind Tonya Harding's involvement in the case, and that became the most widely pushed media narrative of this case. Although this crime does not really fit into one of the most popular CJS frames that were discussed in Surratt, it does fit the greedy businessman narrative, meaning that this was a crime done for financial gain and recognition. Since this crime was done for these reasons, it would be a crime of rational choice. Ultimately, the attackers decided that the gain they would have received from the attack was worth more than being caught and prosecuted for it. One would imagine the media quickly became occupied with many other things going on in 1994. However, the rivalry between Tonya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan was not forgotten. The 2017 film I, Tonya highlights Tonya Harding's quick rise to popularity in the Olympic community and the even faster fall of her reputation after what transpired in this case. This case is still one of the most infamous sports scandals in U.S. history, and I doubt there will be many more like it.